Guys, I honestly think September was the best reading month I have ever had. Like, ever. I am so excited to talk about all these books. I need to put them down though. That actually went better than I thought it would. Welcome back, my sweet friends. We're here with another monthly wrap up. I'm so excited to be talking about all the books that I read in September because I just had the best reading month ever. Like, I just had so much fun with almost every single book that I picked up. Like, it doesn't even matter about how many I read, but the way I felt about these books, like, I just had so much fun and I can't wait to talk about all of these. So let's just jump straight into it, starting off with some stats. I know not everyone loves stats. Feel free to jump ahead. I'll try and leave all the timestamps down below if you do want to skip to anything in particular, but I do know some people love stats, so let's quickly go through a few. Out of the 8 books that I had on my September TBR, I read 6, and I'm pretty happy with that, honestly. Like, 6 out of 8 is a success in my eyes. In total, I read 18 books. 2 of those were rereads. 16 of those were part of a series or will be a part of the series, except the rest of the series isn't out yet. And only 2 were standalones, which is crazy. And then in terms of genre, I read 5 romance, 7 fantasy, 5 mystery, and 1 like general fiction. So let's just jump straight into it. I started off the month very strong because I read the entire Naturals series by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. Jennifer Lynn Barnes also wrote the Inheritance Games. I feel like that's what she's most known for, but recently an older series that she wrote, The Naturals, has kind of been gaining traction again, which is really, really fun. This series is YA mystery, but if you haven't heard about this series, we follow a group of teenagers who have been recruited by the FBI because they have some sort of natural ability. It's not like fantasy vibes, like it's not like they have superpowers, but they're very naturally good at something that the FBI finds really helpful. So one of them is really good at reading emotions, one of them is like a human encyclopedia, just knows lots of statistics and like general knowledge, and they are recruited by the FBI to work on cold cases. And in each book in the series, you kind of follow them solving a different mystery, but all of the books are kind of linked and they kind of follow an even bigger mystery that you work out at the very end of the series, which is really, really fun. I love it when books kind of have like an underlying like mystery that they're working out. And throughout the series, you really get to know the characters so well, and you get to know their backstories and just like where they came from, how they grew up, how they kind of became who they are. And it's just like the best found family. I already miss these characters so much, and I just had so much fun with this series. I cannot recommend it enough. I think I gave the first book like 4.25 stars, mostly because this one is very like introductory. Like, we're very much just getting introduced to the characters and what they all do, and like there is obviously a mystery in this one, but I just feel like it hasn't got as much depth as the rest of the book. So I gave this one 4.25, but it's still so good. And then I think I would give the rest of them 4.5 stars, but I also think in the back of my head it's like a 5-star series for me because I think it just like did everything it needed to do as a YA mystery series. I think if I had to pick my favorite, I would either say book 2 or book 4 because I feel like the plot in those ones were the most interesting to me, but I also loved book 3 because we got a lot of insight behind one of my favorite characters. So I really can't tell. I think, like I said, the rest of them are a 4.5 star for me. And I literally just had so much fun with these. I read this entire series within a week because I just could not put them down. It was like one of those books where you're just like, I just need to keep reading, and whenever I'm not reading, I'm thinking about reading and like when I can read next. I've had a lot of questions about where I got my copies, especially being in Australia. I just got mine from Amazon. I did order them a little while ago, so I don't know if they're still available. I know Booktopia also had the box set for a little while, but I have heard that websites and bookstores are like taking them off the shelves because they are getting republished and like re-released at the end of the year. So if you want to wait and probably get them cheaper, I would wait till they're re-released at the end of the year. However, you can always get them on your Kindle as well, or if you scour the internet enough, I'm sure you can find them like I did, but I really recommend them. I think next I'll touch on my rereads because I don't have too much to say about those. So if you guys have been following along, I have started my Throne of Glass reread and I've just like slowly been making my way through. Last month I read Throne of Glass and Crown of Midnight. This month I read The Assassin's Blade, and I've started my reread of Heir of Fire, but I haven't finished it yet, hence why it's not in this wrap up. But it's been so fun doing a reread of a series that I really love because when I originally read the series, The Assassin's Blade and Crown of Midnight were my 2 least favorite out of the series. I still enjoyed them, but they just, I don't know, they weren't my favorite. But with the reread, I have enjoyed all of the books so much so far. Like, all of them have been phenomenal, even the ones that I didn't enjoy as much the first time. I don't remember what I rated this one the first time. I think I would have to guess around 4 stars, stars, but I think all of the books in this series are gonna be 5 stars in my reread because they're all just so good, and being able to notice all the things that I missed the first time has just been the best thing ever. I love this series so much. I think overall Throne of Glass is my favorite series by Sarah J Maas, so it just makes me so happy to do a reread. And then the other reread that I did this month is Magnolia Parks. If you guys know me, you already know that I love this series with my entire heart. I know it's not for everyone, but it is for me. I love this series so much, and it felt so good to be back in the world, back with my favorite characters. And have I already started this book again? Yes. Is that a good use of my time? Probably not, but I don't care. It just makes me happy. So I love Magnolia Parks. Next up, we have A Conjuring of Light by V.E. Schwab. This is the 3rd book in the Shades of Magic series. So this is the 3rd and final book in the trilogy, or the original trilogy. I'm sure some of you already know, but there has been a new book added to this like world, and I'm so excited. I've already ordered it. I don't know when it's gonna come in, but I'm so excited to continue reading about this world. But that's really not what I should be talking about right now. I should be talking about this book. I think I gave this book 3.5 stars, and I think that's like one of my lowest, or maybe my actual lowest rating out of the entire month, and that is saying something because 3.5 stars is still a great rating, and the fact that all of the other books are above that is insane. And that's why I said I've had the best rating month ever, because I have rated all of these books so highly. For a second I was kind of like, Rachel, you need to be harsher with your ratings, like you're giving everything a really high rating and like you shouldn't be doing that. And then I was like, but all of these books deserve the rating that I'm giving them. Like I'm not just like giving things a high rating for the sake of it. Like I genuinely really enjoyed all of these books. I just got really lucky this month. But back to this book. I did enjoy it. I thought it was good, and I thought it was a great conclusion to the trilogy. I just think I wasn't really attached to this series at all. I don't know why, because I quite enjoy V.E. Schwab's writing and her world building and all of that sort of stuff. But for some reason this trilogy just like didn't do a lot for me. I still enjoyed my reading experience, but I never felt super attached or connected with the characters or with the storyline. I found it interesting and enjoyable, but like nothing really more than that. Again, I still recommend the series, and a lot of people love this trilogy. Like it's a favorite for a lot of people. I don't know if I just read it when I wasn't like quite in the mood for it or like what. The second book is by far my favorite in the series, but overall it was like good. I think because I've heard so many good things about this series, I had a really high expectation and it didn't quite meet that for me, but I still think it's good and I still think it's worth a read. Next up, we have one of my favorite books that I read this month. This was so freaking good. This is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross, and I'm so glad I picked this up. This is a YA like historical fantasy, I would say. In this book, we're following our 2 main characters who both work at a newspaper, and they are rivals. They're both kind of competing for the same position at the newspaper, and so there's this like academic rival kind of vibe to it, which I really enjoyed. But there's also this political aspect because there's this war going on between gods, and I will say the political aspect was a bit confusing to me, but the characters and like their storyline was so good that I almost like didn't care that I didn't really understand what was going on with the political side of things. I think the whole god situation is going to pick up a lot in book 2, and I think I did understand it by the end. There was just a few moments where I was like, I don't quite understand what's going on here. But the love story and the romance in this book is literally perfect, beautiful, show-stopping, incredible. Like you all need to read it because it's literally perfect. These characters are perfect. I loved it, loved it. And it's also very interesting to me because I had so many people come to me and be like, I did not really like this book, or like it was okay, but it wasn't anything amazing. And I'm like, how could you not think this book was absolutely amazing? Like for me, the reading experience was just like 10 out of 10. But I also can see, because it is definitely much more of a slower paced story. So I think if you're someone who loves like a really fast paced, action packed kind of fantasy book, this is probably not the one for you. But if you like a really like slow, romantic, beautifully written, kind of like more lyrical writing, like this is the book for you. I really loved it, and I cannot wait for book 2. I can't wait. I also read Wildfire by Hannah Grace this month. This is an ARC copy, which is super fun. I love it when ARC copies are a little bit different. So this has Aurora on the front and Russ on the back. This book comes out October 4th. So you guys are gonna be able to get your hands on it very soon. And this book is the second book in the, I think it's called the Maple Hills series. The first book was Icebreaker, and that was a romance between a hockey player and a figure skater. This one follows another character who is on the same hockey team. This is the goalkeeper. And the majority of this book takes place at a summer camp where both of the main characters are camp counselors, and they actually had a one night stand at a college party one night. They thought they would never see each other again, and then they both show up to be counselors at this summer camp, and they realize that obviously the other person is there as well, and they're like, oh, we have history. This is going to be interesting. I loved that this was set at a summer camp. I feel like it is such a fun setting for a romance because all the activities and stuff they're doing is just like so fun. And I feel like Hannah Grace always does like friendship groups and like found family really, really well. We do get to see a few of the characters who are in the first book kind of show up in this book here and there, but we also get a bunch of new characters because of all of the other camp counselors that are at the camp and the friendships that they make with the characters, which is really fun. But this book was just like so fun to me. I think I gave this one 4 stars. I think one of the reasons why I really liked this book is because Russ is so sweet. He is kind of like the shy, kind of awkward, like he doesn't really know how to talk to girls. He's definitely not like that cocky kind of like full of himself kind of guy. And I love the kind of more shy, really sweet guys in a romance. I like to call them shy golden retrievers because they're like golden retriever, but they're not like crazy in your face, like high energy. They're just more chill, but they're still really sweet. And Russ is like the epitome of that. And then we have Aurora, who's kind of more of like a party girl. And I feel like they balance each other out really, really well. I just had a lot of fun with this. I think it is so worth the read. Next up, we have Binding and Keeping 13, the absolute tomes. Like these are, whenever I see these sitting on my shelves, I'm like, wow, I really read those. And I'm kind of proud of that. If you don't know what these books are about, we follow Johnny and Shannon, dual POV. Johnny is a really amazing rugby player. It's set in Ireland. Both characters are in high school, and the story starts with Shannon showing up at Tommen College. She has just moved to that school, and that's a school that Johnny goes to. And they have a bit of an incident when they first meet, so they kind of just like start off on the wrong foot. But then we obviously just follow them as individuals as well as them together. Like you really get a lot of character development with each of them as individual people, which I really enjoyed, but you also get to see their relationship just like blossom and develop, and obviously that's like the best part. I was really unsure whether this was going to be something that I enjoyed, but I ended up really connecting with the characters. A lot of people compare this series with the Addicted Calloway sister series, and I can definitely see the parallels, especially with like the found family and just like the character development, I guess, with the main characters. Like Johnny and Shannon do really remind me of Lily and Lo from the Addicted Calloway sister series, so I really do see that kind of comparison. They're still very different, but those elements of it I do see. I ended up rating Binding 13 4.25 stars and Keeping 13 4.75 stars. I really liked Keeping 13. I talked about this a lot in my vlog. I will link all of the vlogs where I talked about any of these books in the description, and I'll like tell you which books are in each vlog in case you want just like a more in-depth explanation and you want to see like my reading experience. But these books feature a lot of discussion around abuse, including physical, verbal, emotional, particularly with Shannon and her parents. And these books are really sad, so I want to make that very clear before you go into these. These are not like silly, funny, goofy romance books. They are very emotional, hard to read at times, and I do think they're worth it, but I just really hesitate to recommend them because I think that they are really difficult to read. I personally found them really difficult to read, and although I really liked the characters and like the found family and stuff like that, I really hated reading about all of the abuse. So I do think they're good books, but yeah, I just want to make that very clear. But I also think that the happy parts of this series are so good, but the sad parts are just really sad. So I do think I'm going to continue the series with Joey's story, but I'm just going to give it a bit of a break because these were difficult. Do with that information what you will. I think that they are for some people, but also not for others. Next up, I read Jade City, and this is an urban fantasy. This is the first book in the Greenbone saga, which is a trilogy, and I gave this 4 stars. I think it was really good, but it really just took me a sec to know what was going on, which was kind of frustrating because as an urban fantasy, you would assume that it's a little bit easier to understand than other fantasies because it is like kind of set in current day. It's more modern. then you'd think in your head it's kind of easier to understand because it's much more similar to our current world. But for some reason, the way it was written, it just took me a really long time to like click with the story and really understand what was going on. But once I did click with the story, I really enjoyed it. In this book, we're following a few main characters who are all part of this family that has a lot of power in this certain city that we're reading about. And in the city, there are kind of like two main families who both have a lot of power, and they're kind of rivals, I guess. And also in this world, the magic system and like the money kind of currency all revolves around jade, like jade as in the stone. And I don't know if I'm the best person to explain the whole like jade situation, but the way I understood it is kind of like the more jade you have, the more power and wealth you have, and jade can kind of give you like more strength and more power, and once you get some of it, you kind of want more of it. It can become an addiction. As a whole, I do think this magic system was really fascinating, and I am intrigued to continue the series and see how it goes and just like see what the author does, because I feel like a lot happened in the first book. So I'm like, if that's what happened in the first book, like what's going to happen in the next books? And I've also had a lot of people say that the next books are like even better. So I'm excited to continue this. I don't know when, but I need to continue it soon before I like forget how the world works, because I know that I will, and I don't want to have to learn it again, because that took me a sec. I also read Yellowface this month. I feel like this book obviously has so much hype. I feel like there's a lot of discussion about this book. I don't know what prompted me to pick this up. I just was kind of in the mood for it, so I decided to pick it up as an audiobook, and I think it's a really good audiobook. I'm so like conflicted with this book. Like I don't really know what to say, because it was so like addicting and enticing, but equally so like uncomfortable and like icky. And if you've read this book, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like the main character is so awful, so unlikable, but she doesn't even know that she's being unlikable, and that is just so fascinating. Like you really jump into her brain and you are just like reading her thoughts and seeing things the way that she sees them, and you as an outside person really can tell that she is not thinking very good thoughts and like thinking in a good way, but she doesn't realize. And that is just really fascinating to know that there are people out there who think they're being good people, but they're really not. It's just fascinating, like really fascinating. I don't even know how to explain the storyline. I guess like a very basic synopsis is we follow our main character who is acquaintances with a successful author. They went to like college together or like shared some classes, and one night when they're having drinks together in the author's apartment, like the one who's really successful, they're in her apartment, and she suddenly dies. And somehow our main character is able to acquire that author's like manuscript for a book that she is almost finished writing. And she kind of just takes that as her own, finishes writing the story, and then publishes it under her own name without giving any credit to her friend who has now passed away. And the story kind of begins there, and we really just follow a series of events that occur after this book has been published. And it is just fascinating to see what this main character thinks and feels and does and justifies. I ended up rating this 4 stars. I think it was really well done, and I just think it was so unique from anything else that I have personally read, and I definitely think it's worth a read. It's just really interesting. I know I keep saying that, but I don't know how else to describe it. Next up, I picked up The Brothers Hawthorne. So this is my 5th Jennifer Lynn Barnes book of the month, which is a little bit much, but this came out at the end of August, so of course I wanted to read it in September. I am a huge Inheritance Games girly. That series is a 5-star series for me. I've read it twice. I love it. I think I just like love YA mystery like way more than I like adult mystery and thrillers. Like I find YA mystery just like so much more fun, fast-paced, like interesting, and so I just like love the Inheritance Games. So of course when it was announced that there was like a spin-off coming that would follow the brothers, I was so excited, and I ended up really enjoying this. I don't think it's as good as the original trilogy, but I do think it is a lot of fun. I do think this book is kind of like for the girls who like love the Inheritance Games. Like I think if you already found the Inheritance Games kind of like more mediocre, it's probably not really worth your time to pick up this book, because I think it's really just like for the fans of the boys, you know? Like I don't think you'll find it that interesting if you don't like love the characters, but if you are attached to the characters and really love them and just like want to, you know, see more of their adventures, I do think it's worth the read. In this book we are following Grayson and Jamison. Also, I get like comments saying that I say Jamison's name wrong, and I don't know if it's like I'm saying it wrong or if I'm just saying it how Australians say it. because in Australia we do like say names differently. And so forgive me if I am just like literally saying it wrong. For example, Americans say Craig, we say Craig. Americans say Graham, we say Graham. And I can't tell if this is one of those situations where you guys say Jameson and we say Jamison. All of the boys that I grew up with that had this spelling of their name, I called them Jamison and like they were called Jamison. But again, like I don't know. So I'm just gonna keep saying Jamison. It might be wrong, but I honestly just don't care. Either way, not important. We follow Grayson and Jamison, and they each have their own storyline and they each get their own chapters where you're reading from their POVs, and they're kind of like both on their own little mission / adventure. And it's just kind of fun to see them like solving their own mystery, doing their own thing. And obviously you get to see a lot of the other characters from the previous stories pop up in here as well. But this is the start of a duology, I think, so there is going to be another book that comes out, I assume next year, that kind of continues the story. And I'm really intrigued to see Grayson's story in the next book, because I feel like it was kind of left open for there to be some specific developments. And as a Grayson girly, I can't wait to see what those developments are. I hope he gets a happy ending because he really deserves it. Then we have another book that was an absolute favorite of mine this month, and this is Powerless. This was an easy 5 stars for me. This was so good. This is a fantasy, and in this story we follow Payton and Kai. Payton is kind of like a nobody. She has no powers, and in this world some people have powers, some people don't. The people who do have powers are called elites, and if you don't have a power, you're kind of shunned, exiled, killed, because they want an elitist society. So we have Payton, who doesn't have a power, but she's pretending to have a power so that she doesn't get killed. And then we have Kai, who is part of the royal family, has a really, really good power. And these two characters both kind of find themselves in the purging, which is like a set of trials that is held between the elites to kind of just like kind of see who the best elite is. It kind of gives Hunger Games, kind of doesn't. I think if you liked the Hunger Games, this could be a really fun like adult version of the Hunger Games, and like kind of give you that same feeling that the Hunger Games gave you when you read it as like a 12-year-old. It definitely felt like that to me. But this book is super fast paced. It has an amazing romance in it. I don't think it is like the best magic system or world building that I've ever read, but it was just so fun that like that part kind of just didn't matter to me. And it was one of those books that I just like did not want to put down. I could not get enough of it. It had me kicking, it had me giggling. Like I was obsessed, and I can't believe this is a debut novel for Lauren Roberts. Like this is an incredible debut in my opinion. I think if you read Fourth Wing and you loved it, like you need to read this. Honestly, even if you didn't love Fourth Wing, you need to read this. I liked this way more than I liked Fourth Wing, and I really enjoyed Fourth Wing, so that's like obviously really saying something. But it was just so freaking good. Like the banter and the tension between our two love interests was done chef's kiss, so perfect. Like I said, this is 5 stars to me, and I know Divine Rivals was also 5 stars, but Divine Rivals is one of those books where I can understand why it's like hit and miss, and like why some people don't love it and some people do. Like it's kind of one of those books where it's like, oh, you might like it, you might not, but I'm not too sure. Whereas this book is one of those books where I honestly think most people will really enjoy it, and I think this will be one of my like go-to fantasy recommendations moving forward, because it is like, I think, gonna be a huge crowd pleaser. We're almost at the end, but next we have The Long Game by Elena Armas. This was a 4-star read for me. This was super fun. This is like a rom-com, small town, slow burn. We follow Adeline and Cameron. Adeline ends up having a bit of a PR like incident at her work, and so her boss, who is also her dad, ends up moving her out to this small town to be the manager of a soccer team, and the coach of the soccer team is Cameron, who is a retired professional soccer player. And so now they're kind of like a forced proximity situation, and they really don't like each other at the start, but like I said, it is such a good slow burn, and he ends up being so obsessed with her, and I love it because she's never really had a great relationship, like never really been treated that well, or like had a guy be obsessed with her. But when he's starting to like cook for her and like do nice things for her, she's almost like, what are you doing? I don't know how to react to this because I've never like had someone treat me this well. And it's just really fun. Also, the soccer team that they're working with is like all like 10-year-old or 9-year-old girls, and they were so cute and so funny to me. And then lastly, I read Once Upon a Broken Heart and The Ballad of Never After. Finally read these books, and I thoroughly enjoyed them. The first one was 4.25 stars for me, and the second one was an easy 5 stars. Like it was phenomenal, like perfect, honestly. And so including the rereads that I did this month, I had 5 5-star books and multiple 4.5-star reads, which is like unheard of for me. I think last month I had like 1 5-star, the month before that I had like 2, and obviously excluding my rereads, I still had 3 new 5-star reads. Like, that's crazy to me. I'm so happy. I had the best reading month ever, and these 2 books definitely contributed to this month just being like the best month ever, because I became specifically obsessed with the second book and specifically obsessed with the romance that happens in this book, which again mostly happens in the second book. There's like crumbs in the first book, but you really have to hold out for the second book, I think, for it to really hit. I cannot wait for the third book. The end of the second book really caused me a lot of pain. If you want to see my reactions while reading this book, go watch my last video. I'll have it linked down below. And whilst I'm so glad that you guys convinced me to read this series, because it's really been one of like my most requested books to read like ever on my channel, I'm also really mad that you guys made me read it before the third book came out, because if the third book was already out, I really would have been able to read the whole series and probably not experience the pain that I am now feeling and the impatience that I'm now feeling, not being able to know what happens to these characters. So hate that for me, but also loved reading these books. So you win some, you lose some. Oh my gosh, my leg is asleep. But those are all the books that I have to talk about today. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this wrap up. I think my top favorites of the month, excluding rereads, would have to be Divine Rivals, Powerless by Lauren Roberts, and Once Upon a Broken Heart / The Ballad of Never After. So if you need a new read and you haven't read any of those, or like one of those, please go read them, because those are like my top recommendations for you guys. But feel free to leave me a comment letting me know what your favorite book of the month was, because I'm always looking for new recommendations, and especially if you guys loved it, then I want to know. But I love you guys so much, and I will see you in my next video very soon. Goodbye.